naalala mo yung eto pinag-usapan din namin nung isang videographer namin sa MWF nung lumabas yung kay John Lloyd tsaka kay Bea.
Yes.
Kasi eto mabibridge ko na dun sa topic natin about pro wrestling, di ba?
True.
So yung pro wrestling, merong idea, yung sinabi ko sa iyo through message the other day. Yung kayfabe, naalala mo yon, yung Kayfabe. That's how it's spelled. So, yung origins nung word na yon ay dahil yung origin ng pro wrestling was it's a con. It was a con. I mean, they were conning people that this is a true, real competition in carnivals.
Mm.
So, para ma-protect yung idea na it's a true and it's a real competition, they invented words or they invented a jargon or a language sort of that only people within the business understand. And as a collective, it's called kayfabe or kayfabing. It means, for example, if we're both from the industry and we know na merong kasama tayo or meron tayong kausap na hindi privy dun sa nature ng ginagawa ng pro wrestling, sasabihin nila dun sa isang tao, kayfabe, and then they'd understand. And then they will talk about pro wrestling as if it's real. So that's the parang kayfabe. And then everyone will act as if it's real. So kaya ako naisip yung Bea John Lloyd na yun because it started like that. It was like that. They did not promote it as something that was scripted or they did not say it was a performance from both actors. And I don't, if I remember it correctly, parang sinabi na lang nila after the fact, di ba? Parang people while watching the video, people were thinking that this is a real interaction between John Lloyd and Bea. So na-inject yung idea na yon, which is like, you sell something as if it's true and people would get interested, and people will buy the thing and be invested in it. And I think that's where pro wrestling, the power of pro wrestling originated. If we're talking about the history of the art form, it really started as a real competition. I don't know, and I don't want to pretend that I am an encyclopedia in terms of all this history, but I'll tell you the basics. The basics are it started as a real competition. It's real wrestling. But then the matches went on for too long. I mean, it's not like boxing matches na when you knock someone out, that's tapos na. Wrestling is like, you could be wrestling for the whole freaking day and no one will win or no one will lose. And so what will happen is that what happened was they thought it was boring. People at that time thought it was a boring thing that they were, presenting something na na real wrestling. So what happened was the wrestlers themselves started fixing the matches. Some matches, not all matches. But for example, this thing, hey, I don't wanna go 60 minutes trying to wrestle. So let's just think of an idea and how it would end and something. And so it became slowly common practice. And then some promoters na natunugan nila na ganun yung ginagawa, they said, why don't we just make it that way? and make it interesting. Let's talk about who will win, who will lose, who are the champions, and let's talk about it among ourselves. We know that this is not real competition, but let's not tell the audience. The audience will think that this is real. So for a few decades, it was like that. Of course, may hindi naman siguro mga tanga yung mga tao noon. Marami ng mga nagsasabi na medyo phony looking siya, or medyo you don't but people try to protect what they can. When you're in the business, people try to protect the secrets of it. It's like magic. You don't tell everyone how you do the magic tricks. So what happened was, if you are a bad guy, then you would act like a bad guy whenever you're in public. And there were stories na kahit yung families ng mga wrestlers before, they did not know that it was fake. So it was like, they really would not talk about it outside of the business itself. And then, yun nga, if you're a good guy, then you have to protect how good your image is. And if you're a bad guy, then you can't be shaking people's hands or kissing babies in public. So this is a 24/7 performance. It's like the you live the character.
So may persona ka na, kumbaga. Yeah.
Oh yeah. There's this one there are some incidents. There's this one story na because the bad guys and the good guys, they are not allowed by the promotions to be seen together in any situation. If for example, if there's an incident where you happen to see your rival, it's either you go out of the room or the situation, or you pretend to beat each other up. It's like that. So what happened was, they were boarding a plane and the plane crashed. So the bad guys, I can't remember the names, but then the bad guys and the good guys were all together in one plane that crashed. And this is how they protected the business. So the good guy, they it's a good thing the good guy was like the least injured out of everyone. So syempre lalabas sa news na may nag-crash, tas ito yung mga pangalan nila, di ba? So ang nangyari was, the good guy wrestler na kasama dun sa nag-crash, he was the only one na good guy. Everyone else was the bad guy. So ang nangyari was, they transported the good guy out of there kaagad-agad and took him to a wrestling show, and he worked a match just to level any talk that he was in there. So that's how they protected everything. And when you read the stories, when you hear the stories, when the bad guys died and it was announced to the arenas that so and so died, and he happened to be a bad guy, people cheered when they died. And when you talk to the people na nagkikwento ng mga ganito, the older ones, they would say, if that guy could hear the cheering when he died, he would be very happy, because that's how it is. It's like, that means he did his job and he lived a good life, because people hated him until the end. So ganun yung mindset na nabuo ng
Parang niyakap na yung, I mean, yun na yung personality nila eh. Niyakap na nilang buo na ako to. Hindi katulad sa theater na okay, iwan mo. Yung may ganun.
Oo, yeah. Walang ganun. There was no off switch. And yun yung kayfabe as a whole.
Yeah.
You can't just drop the act. You
And
can't
at
just
nung sinabi mo you use Bea and John Lloyd na usapan, na mismong si Antoinette Hadaune, ang sinabi niya noon, mahaba yung description niya eh. Parang hindi niya rin alam kung film ba yon or ano ba siya, ano ba conversation. So hindi niya
yeah.
ko ng klaseng medium. So sinabi niya, nag-experiment lang din kami kasi nga they were using their personal accounts na nagiging problem ko rin sa mismong personal account ko kasi doon ko ina-upload yung mga monovlogs. And
Mhm.
I think, yun din yung tinatanong ko sa'yo kasi ikaw, di ba kilala ka as musician, theater actor. Tapos, nilagay mo yung, kumbaga, sarili mo, yung brand mo as William,
Yeah.
doon sa Manila Wrestling Federation. So, ano ngayon yung parang mix na nabuo mo?
Yeah.
Parang
Oo nga
are
eh.
praising that kind of tradition na parang hindi ko alam eh kasi nga sabi mo pro wrestling to and very western siguro ang concept and yun yung
Mhm.
gusto ko malaman if we're going to translate that pro wrestling papunta dito sa local context pareho ba parang ganun din ba
But
dating
this is going to be a long and interesting conversation. First of all, it's like the people are just like, I find it so funny because some people react like weirdly, just to think that the guy who wrote Mula sa Buwan also writes this shit.
yeah
And like it's just so it's a total disconnect from like everything they think of you as. It's like, there's this one thing. It's like we were running a show in UP in Bahay ng Alumni. And so we had a large screen, right? And it's like uh, so we are able to show like advertisements through that screen. Um, and it's so funny because I called up Pat because that's when we were running Mula sa Buwan in Ateneo. Said, do you want to can we put up the Mula sa Buwan trailer before our show? And of course he said yes. So it's just so funny because like a lot of those wrestling fans saw apparently they saw Mula sa Buwan. And it's just so much like, you're that guy. I can't even imagine that you're that guy. And I said, yeah, I'm that guy. And it's just like there's this whole ecosystem in the Philippine wrestling community. Like you have like vloggers and you have people who critique your shows. They don't know anything, but they do. They watch the shows and they would write reviews and they would do podcasts discussing your shows, and it's so funny because like some of them don't like me because there's a whole thing. I told you about the rival promotions and stuff. So meron ding ano diyan, kumbaga may Noranians and Vilmanians type of, like, they won't appreciate anything the other guy does and be loyal to the other brand and vice versa. So some of these vloggers, some of these reviewers, quote unquote, they don't like us. And they would speak of whatever we're doing in such negative terms. And one time I was listening to this podcast, and the guy was saying, I don't like this William Elvin. I don't know what he does, but I don't like him. But I saw Mula sa Buwan, it made me cry, and he's a very talented guy, but I don't like him in wrestling. And for me, it's just like it's so crazy that way. But for me, it's just like it's all part of what I do. I mean, to me, it doesn't contradict anything. It's creativity. It's an artistic outlet. And
yeah, and parang nakita ko yung, kung kunwari ako yung nagsasalta, nakita ko yung spectrum mo siguro na parang
yeah,
I hate you, pero alam mo, gusto ko to naiyak ako.
yeah,
Natagos mo yung emotions, kumbaga, kung nasama ka doon sa plane crash na yon baka natutuwa ka rin, kumbaga, di ba?
exactly. If I died and they cheered, then I don't know, but probably half of them would say, oh, the guy who wrote Mula sa Buwan, which I saw and I cried, died. But then I hate the guy's guts. But then they don't know me. I mean, that's the thing. And they are, and how we view it is that they are fans, whether they like you or they don't like you. They're all playing to the whole act,
Yeah.
right?
And
and that's fine.
ng meaning making and mas lalong nag-iingay din. So parang ikaw nakakuha ka ng idea. Kasi pagkatapos natin ng curtain call sa theater, wala na tayong ganitong conversation eh. Na
Yeah,
ang gusto ko rin, like kunwari sa sinasabi mong parang cult following ay may podcast, may
yeah.
blog, 'di ba? Kumbaga,
There's a whole ecosystem.
ang galing.
Yeah. It's yeah, I told you this is a like the long history of something. Pero I mean, I want to take it back to where what we were thinking of. It's like, yun nga, like some people wonder why the guy who wrote Mula sa Buwan and wrote all this, wrote ang sabi nila, also wrote the violent thing that they are watching. And um that's the whole thing. As I said, it doesn't contradict sa akin. I mean, if we have people who, if you are a filmmaker, you could do a horror film and you could do a love story at the same time, and it wouldn't make a difference. You're making films. So ganun siya. That's how I see the thing. And being a lifelong fan of wrestling, uh, what drew me was really the performance aspect of it. I remember my dad was he did not like me watching wrestling when I was a kid.
Ako rin.
For huh?
Ako rin. Parang
Yeah,
lahat.
if you had a kid, right? So it's very it's a tricky situation, and it's like um but for my dad, it's like it was different. Like I was okay. He was watching boxing or whatever thing in front of me, which is more violent actually. But I'm not allowed to watch wrestling. And when I asked why, he said that because it's fake. So I said, well, what's wrong with being fake? We watched Die Hard. Oh, sorry, we watched Die Hard the other day, and I know it was fake. No one's blowing up a building or whatever. But when I knew that it was fake, when I learned that it was fake, it just drew me in even more.
Pareho tayo.
Kasi 'di ba parang as a creative kid, it piques your interest. Like, okay, so my dad said this is fake. How do they fake this?
That's right.
And
Yeah.
why am I so interested? So naging ganun yung view ko. And um when I was a kid, I would write down what happens per show.
Sino favorite mo?
Ah,
Inan like favorites mo or favorite match?
my most favorite wrestler is Mick Foley. You may know him as Mankind.
Yeah.
So that's my favorite. He's my favorite wrestler. But my favorite match would be Bret Hart versus Steve Austin, WrestleMania 13.
Bret
So,
Hart.
oh, di ba? So if you go back and see that match, we can actually you can see
Bret.
that match, Bret Hart. Yes, but Bret Hart versus Austin, WrestleMania 13. If you see that match, ask me questions why I like that match so much, and I could break it down for you why. But the thing is that um, that's what hooked me. The storylines hooked me, the characters hooked me, and it's like it's funny because like when people say like why are you a wrestling fan, it's fake, right? And I would say I know it's fake and that's why I like it. And if you think that saying or telling people that it's fake is going to discourage people who like you're the one who looks stupid because you are parang mong ano, 'di ba? Parang mong sinabing hindi totoo si SpongeBob, 'di ba? Na parang alam mo yun, parang well, yeah, duh, we know that it's not true. Like you don't believe that there's bikini bottom or whatever. So you can't just tell people, wrestling is fake. Yeah, wrestling is fake and it's what the hence why it's fun. So, yun, ganun siya. And so I was a lifelong wrestling fan who took note of every storyline. And so I had a few dreams growing up. One is to be an actor, and I was able to do that. One was to be a writer of whatever, like films or whatever. Be a writer, and I was also able to do that. Third one is become a musician. I was also able to do that. So uh, my last dream was to write a wrestling show, and
Wow. Yeah.
that was the only thing that before you'd think that that's the only thing na I don't know if I could achieve it or not or whatever, but I really wanted to do that. So in 2012 or 2013, I found this Facebook group of wrestling fans uh, na nasa Pilipinas, and we were we were crazy enough to think that we can put up our own wrestling company. So we put up PWR. We we staged our first show in a small gym in Bikutan. It's called Fit Plus Gym. So we had like 40 people in the audience, 30 people. Because you just tell everyone, hey, there's wrestling, and they came. It was a bad show wrestling wise, because no one knew what they were doing. I mean, we had one American pro wrestler who tried to train the guys the basics. Wrestling is weird kasi the performers, some or a lot of the performers, especially if they don't know what they're doing, and this is a fantasy that they're living out. That was a fantasy that they were living out. So if they imagine themselves as the next John Cena or the next CM Punk, then they would say, I don't want to lose. I want to do cool things. There was actually one guy who told me that he can't lose because he wants to make his parents proud. And he wants to win the championship because he wants to make his parents proud. Oh, are you going to tell them you won a fake match? There's a writer who wrote that I won the match and I won the match. And it's like, it's funny. So at first it was like that. It was people who were hard to manage because they don't understand the performance aspect of it. Except for very few. There were very few people that got it just like that. They were natural performers, and they would think whatever we need to do to tell a story that we want to tell, if I need to do this, we do this, and then we ran with those people. And so we were able to put up our first show then in Bikutan in 2013, if I'm not mistaken. And then a short time after, I had to go to Hong Kong. I had to go to Hong Kong in 2014. So when I went to Hong Kong, I was still writing the shows for PWR. So I think I wrote two more shows while I was in Hong Kong. And going back to the story of people who are hard to manage, there's this one guy who did not like what I was writing for him to do. So I said, if you want to run this thing like this and it's so hard to manage, then I don't want to do it anymore. And so I left the group. So I left PWR. And they continued on without me, and lumaki yung fan base and yung following nila. Um, and then some other guys from PWR broke away and did their own put up their own production, which was MWF in 2016. They had their first show in 2017 April. So I'm friends. I don't know what what was happening. They'd ask me for some thoughts, and I would give them my thoughts. They were able to do their shows in Makati Cinema Square with a boxing ring. They were wrestling in a boxing ring, and it's not healthy for your back because wrestling rings are built differently. So when you fall on a boxing ring, it's harder. But they were able to do things like that on a boxing ring. So another wrestling fan in the theater community, which is Tarek El Tayesh. So Tarek watched the MWF shows and the PWR shows, and I think that was the time he was filming By Bust with
Eric Mati?
Ann Curtis,
Ba
right?
yan?
Yeah, Eric Mati. So he was filming By Bust. I think he had some money out of it. So he approached MWF and said, "I want to finance the promotion. Let's get a real wrestling ring. Let's put up real shows to showcase the talent," because he really was impressed with the people working there. And so sila uh, then Veronica, her name is Veronica now, Veronica Litton, um, said yes, okay, let's work together, and I'm excited for that. So when the people agreed that he will finance and be the president of MWF, he called me up. Tarek called me up and said, "I want you to write my shows." I said, "Okay, I'll write your shows."
Nandiyan ka na nun?
Yeah. Nandito ako sa Hong Kong. And I said, okay, I'll write the shows. So send me the videos, introduce me to everyone. I talked to all the wrestlers, to all the talent. I've seen their videos. I took down notes of what they can and cannot do, their personality, strengths, and weaknesses. I took notes of everything. Pag umuwi ako, sinasabay ko, I meet them, I talk to them, I talk to Tarek, we hold our meetings. And so we did our first show in UP, February 2018, in the film center, I think. Yeah, sa Mascom. So I can't remember where exactly. Pero one of the small venues there. So we had Omdavid to do the ring, and it was a perfect ring. Like, Om naman is not gonna do anything that is going to be inferior and, and stuff. So he researched, because it's like you can't just get these things out of a blueprint and and build them yourself. So is a professional, so he researched how to do it. He was able to put up the ring. We got the ring, and we were able to put up the show there sa UP. And it was well received by the wrestling fans. Like, the fans said they were very hopeful of how it was gonna be. It was different. It felt like a real show. I wrote the show like how a professional would write it.
Yeah.
Um,
Gusto ko yung sinabi mo, William, like how a professional would write it. Like, ano ba ang structure ng paggawa ng show? When you say show, may term din ba sa wrestling na, oh, one act play lang to, ito full length tayo. May ganun ba?
wala. I mean, it's just if we're talking of like wrestling, purely wrestling, what they just do is list down the segments. They would just list down, match number one is Olive versus Dexter or whoever. Like, match number two is William versus the Machine or whoever. Before MWF, I was also lucky enough to go around Southeast Asia and connect with the wrestling promotions and saw how they put the shows together, and was largely like that. Do the match for 8 minutes and go out there and whatever. But Tarek and I, like being theater people, we had a very different idea of how we wanted to do it. And it's uh going back to your influences of like, watching the WWF or the WWE, um like I don't know how they write their shows. I don't know how the structures of their shows are, but we were able to deduce these things, and people who work there have experience in production, in theater, in television, in films, because their shows look like they are put together by people who know what they're doing. So I said, let's take what we know, which is how to structure live events, and how to write stories, and let's put that into practice. Let's treat it as this is an entertainment genre. Wrestling is an entertainment genre that we are writing for.
Yeah.
Um, so it became like that. The MWF philosophy was like that. And it's a very good thing that most people in MWF, even the ones that did not have any theater background or television background, got what we wanted to do, and were
Mm.
smart enough to acknowledge that, okay, that's the direction we want to take. Let's take that direction.
Yeah. I think malinaw
Uh,
kasi yung intention, William. I think yun yung nakukuha ko from you now na parang, o sige,
yeah,
gawin natin gantong entertainment. So may parameters na kayo from the start kung ano yung trajectory siguro ng gusto ninyong gawin. Di ba? Yeah.
yeah, very much. That's really what happened. So when I wrote the first MWF show that I wrote, so nag-ano pa kami, nag-conference call kami with Tarek, Veronica, and Lexi, and we were discussing. And because you're working with professionals, just like Lexi's there, and um, she put together her crew. So even how the lights would shift, it became like a theater production, and we were able to do things that were not yet imagined by any other promotion in Southeast Asia, at least. Because of course, the WWE already did these things, but we were able to do things that we we imagined doing. Like, okay, right after this segment, we don't want any dead air. Patong kagad si ganito. If you want, so you were able to do things like, they were having a match. Tapos merong isang just to set up the storyline. The other guy goes to the ring and tries to save his teammate but fails. Alam mo yun, those things. And you set up those storylines, and then you get the segments after. You give them some time to tell the stories in between the matches, and it really became like a solid 3-hour show. Um, so there, the next show we did was in Centris in ABS-CBN, and Tarek was like really excited with all these things, and we were just bouncing ideas off. And we just knew that there's this one guy, si Gigs Striker. I'm sure you're familiar with him now. So Gigs
Detective.
is very, you look at him and he looks like something that someone that you wanna watch. right? He looks like an outdated 90s action star, and he gave off that vibe. So I said, why not? Let's make him that. Let's shoot a movie, uh, because he can't perform in the wrestling ring as good as the others, right? So you have people like sila Fabio Makisig, sila Robin Sane, who really are really good athletes, really good wrestlers. And you have a gig striker who is very charismatic and is very fun to watch, but can't perform on the same level. So you have to give him the same type of attention because people want to see him, but you don't want to expose his weaknesses. So I said, let's write him a movie, right? Let's present him as an action star. Let's write him a movie. And so I was say, I told Tarek, can we contact, for example, okay, let's contact Elora Españo. And so we talked to Elora. Elora said yes, she wanted to do it. And so I wrote the script. Originally, Giggs was the one who was good. It was Elora who was gonna be saved by Giggs. That's how I wrote it. And then one night, Tarek just called me up and said, I think I can get Maria Ozawa. Are you kidding me? Are you have access to Maria Ozawa? And she said, yes, I do have access to Maria Ozawa. Okay, then let's put Maria Ozawa in the movie. How long can we get Maria Ozawa? And Tarek said, I think we can book her for 2 days. So let's shoot her for one day, and then let's have her there live. And I said, it's like, okay, this is interesting. So I rewrote the whole thing. I put Elora in the Menudo Carinderia character. And I said, this is gonna be a series. I want this to be a series, and I want to build up something between Gigs and the Elora character. Then we wanted to have Maria Ozawa there. So I said, here's a funny thing that we were able to do. So I said, I want Maria Ozawa to be a surprise, but I want to give hints that she's gonna be there. And what we did was we we got a safe for work picture of Maria Ozawa, and I said, let's put this up on the social media channel. Blur her face like they do on the Japanese porn things. Blur her face, but let's say a Japanese legend is gonna be appearing in the MWF show, and you put up a picture of a woman with a blurred face, and people are gonna be expecting that it's gonna be Maria Ozawa, and so people came because they somehow knew that Maria was gonna be there. And so we shot the film. They shot the film. They shot the film Saturday night. I think the show was a Sunday. Dumating ako sa Pinas ng Saturday night, so they were already shooting. And when we got to the venue, Maria Ozawa was there. So we shot a few more backstage vignettes, and I'm going to remind me to explain how we do this later. So we shot backstage vignettes para it looked like she was appearing the whole show, because there were segments in between na lumalabas siya dun sa screen. So we shot that, and it's she was lovely to work with. Miss Maria, we want you to do this and this and this, and she do everything. And then we hid her in her car for like 2 hours before the before the big reveal. And the live crowd was just so, went crazy when, number one, when they saw her on screen, there was a loud reaction there. They saw she, oh, Maria. And then they did not know that she was actually there. So the transition from the screen to the live segment, people were already buzzing that, is Maria Ozawas, is she gonna be here? And when she appeared, that was up until that point, that was the loudest live crowd reaction I've ever heard.
Yeah, and you
And
know,
I've been to sport events,
yeah, and maganda
I've
yung
been to PBA, but this is different.
yeah, kasi ang ganda nung pampainit. I mean, kasi nasa screen na siya, tapos biglang lumabas pa.
Yeah.
I just don't know the power of that. Kasi parang nakikita mo lang siya, tapos nandyan na siya, and you're actually parang ginagawa mo rin yung tricks pagdating sa wrestling talaga na real ba to or fake ba tong ginagawa namin. It's the same thing. Parang hindi nasa screen siya eh. Paano
Oh
siya
yeah.
ito malayo? 'Di ba parang ganon? So ikaw as audience,
Yeah. Yeah.
hindi wala yan dito, hindi na siguro, baka dyan lang. And yung
Yeah.
ganong break mo yung expectation, parang it's a talent. I think yan yung mga nakikita kong unique sa experience.
It's creativity between the people. I mean, I just put everything together. The ideas are me, Tarek, and Veronica, and we listen to whatever the wrestlers pitch, and we put them all together, and then I just put them together in one format. But this really is a collaborative work, and so we did that show. I also brought wrestlers from Singapore and Hong Kong. Uh, the Hong Kong wrestler had an experience in the WWE, so he was just coming off that WWE run, so people still were familiar with him. Um, and we just knew that people knew him, so you have to feature him as a main character in all this. So what we did was we positioned him as a villain. So he turned on Robin Sane, who was our top star. So we set up a story between the Pinoy favorite and the Hong Kong uh, known wrestler. So the the thing with wrestling is that you're always writing for the next show. It feels like writing an episodic TV series,
Yeah, kaya
actually.
siguro, ano yung title?
So you,
Ella ba? Tama ba ako?
yeah, action novela. So we call it the action novela. So I write the whole thing, the script. I order it as you set it up for the first segment. You set up what happens in the next show, and then complication happens in the middle of it that would lead to a logical end sa ending. And as much as you can, you try to make the ending very interesting so that people would say, I want to go back and see what happens next. And we were able to cultivate a small fan base of like returning people. You see the people, the same faces every time. They'd follow you wherever you go. We did a bunch of shows around malls throughout 2019, and whether it was in Quezon City or it was in, what's the farthest we got, Resorts World, they were the same people who who showed up and saw our shows, and they were so invested in the storylines and the characters, and you hear their podcasts, and they discuss what they like and don't like, and they discuss their theories of what's going to happen next. And I was saying, it's like, when I was young, I felt like that. You watch the X-Files or whatever and you theorize what's happening next. That's what you're doing to the fans that are hooked on your shows. And that was the most rewarding thing for me. Na parang, alam mo yun, parang you know and you listen and you read their expectations, and then you try to swerve them and you try to give them something that they did not expect, and they would eat it up. And it's just, it's such a rewarding experience for everyone.
Yeah.
um
Parang
so,
ang
so, so
nakukuha ko,
Sarah.
William, ang ganda kasi parang you were talking about, syempre, yung structure nung drama na ginagawa
Yeah,
storyline. So, nasa pagitan siya ng language ng theater and film. Pero ito, biglang may pumapasok na parang TV kasi nga invested ka sa character. So, kaya siya naging telenovela kumbaga eh. So,
yeah.
ito yung parang sumiseparate na okay, parang ito hindi theater, hindi na to film. And then you have that mix na hala, telenovela na siya. So, were you aware of that na parang tumatawid kayo ng...
Very much. I was very much aware. I told Tarek, if we say that we own and promote the first episodic theater company in the Philippines, we could be right.
Yeah.
Of course, no one yet is going to acknowledge that because no one understands it quite fully. But once people know and understand and recognize what we're doing, there's quite a possibility that people will say they're a theater company and they do an episodic thing because they continue their shows every time.
And yes,
And it's the same story and it's a long thread of a story. And we do things like, in the theater, we do things like multimedia. That's exactly what we were doing. I mean, you could put up a video while you're doing the show, and then you could mesh things up, and it's still theater. And this is a very physical form of theater in all aspects of it, from the storytelling
yeah,
to what happens in the ring. It's physical theater. Everything is performance and everything is theater. We were okay calling our page a performance arts page, and people were like questioning us before, like, how is that, it's like, don't you want to brand yourself as a sports company or whatever? It's not. It's not. And some people would hate us. Some wrestling purists will hate us for acknowledging that openly. But we're sorry. I mean, we're not sorry. We're proud of what it really is, which is performance arts of a lot of different aspects.
yeah,
And I want I want people to really recognize the the complexities and the the nuances of this art form. That's why nung minessage mo ko about it, I said, yes, I really want to do this because this is a chance for us to put this into perspective
yeah.
and maybe, start an academic discussion about it because no one is doing it. And this is the perfect avenue for that.
Sinusulat mo siya based doon sa skills ng mga
Mhm.
wrestlers.
Yeah,
At the same
yeah.
time, sinusulat mo siya na iniisip mong live na gagawin, pero sinusulat mo rin ba siya na TV format? Kasi 'di ba dalawa 'yon, dalawang factors ang MWF sa nakikita ko eh. So, meron kang malaking screen, pero meron ka rin talagang camera na makikita ko yung
Yeah,
okay, so may darating na naka-neck brace tapos
yeah, 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 yeah.
sasalita tapos biglang ta-transition sa 'yon. So parang are you writing both for the live and the TV format? Ano yung itsura ng script mo? Hindi ko ma-imagine.
Ah, ang itsura ng script ko ay uh, if you want, I could send you.
Yeah.
I'll look for one and I'll send it to you. But basically, I write it like a TV format. So what happens is that I write segment number one. Um, the non-wrestling the non-wrestling segments are called angles. So we call those angles. So I would say segment number one is an angle. For example, I want Fabio Makisig to come out and call out Gus Queens. right? So I will put there segment 1, Angle, Fabio Makisig calls out Gus Queens. And I would describe the scene. I don't put specific words. I don't put specific lines. I just tell, I just write there, for example, Fabio Makisig enters the venue and uh, he asks Gus Queens for a match against Mr. Lucha, for example. So I would put there Gus Queens comes out, and we would put inserts saying, okay, here's where the entrance music should play. When we get there, we don't talk about what the other guy is going to say. We just give them parameters. And then sometimes when it's very cue specific, I would just ask him, decide on the last line, right? So if you decide that your last line would be, hindi ako aalis dito hanggat hindi ko nakukuha yung gusto ko, then that's when I play. And I stay in nasa prod booth ako. So I guide the staff. With every one of us, we have the script, which this is like crazy because it's like if you leave the script of Hamlet and the people see it, there's not much damage because everyone knows what Hamlet is anyway. But if you leave the script in the audience area and then the audience goes and sees the whole thing, then the whole thing is ruined, right? So before we open house, like, we make sure that there's no scripts lying around and
May nangyari bang ganun? Wala na?
no, thankfully, and sana walang mangyari forever. But anyway, so we have the scripts there, and then the cues are there. So I'm probably the should be the most focused because I know what happens, and then I have the, okay, so this is where he says this line. I'm going to cue the music, and then Gus Queens comes out. Whatever the outcome is. So that's segment number 1, and then segment number 2 is a match. So you just put there, okay, entrance, 1 minute entrance for, let's say, Gig Striker. Entrance number 2 is for his opponent, let's say Classical Brian Leo. Sig Pecho's lines are also written in there, like the introductions and stuff. So Sig will go around, for example, before the show, he'll ask for the stats of the wrestlers, like, okay, so anong weight, height, whatever, ganyan. And then he'll do the introductions. And so that it's more of a guideline and a format or an outline of whatever's happening. But then the main story beats are there. For example, if someone is supposed to interfere a match, then you put it there. And you explain that to the wrestlers. Why are you coming out? Why are you helping this guy? What's the plan for you moving forward? There's a lot of things that are getting managed. And my favorite experience was, so I wrote this storyline between Fabio Makisig and Rex Lawin. And I wrote something within the show in Bahay ng Alumni. So we shot we filmed a backstage segment. Tapos naalala ko pa, nagpunta pa akong nasa Bangkok ako nito, nasa Thailand ako nung sinushoot nila yung segment. So ang sinulat ko is, sa show itself, a backstage staff would run out to disrupt the show and say, may nangyayari sa labas. So I put it there, okay, may nangyayari sa labas, and then a cameraman runs out. So it has to be a perfect transition of the cameraman runs out, and then we play the video of what they shot beforehand. And what happened was, it was a perfect transition of paglabas nila doon, pag cue ng video, it's the cameraman with the camera on running. And it's so funny because I wrote this and I just tested if they can pull this off. So what I wrote there was, the cameraman runs out and they see uh, Fabio Makisig and Rex Lawin brawling outside bahay ng alumni. So they were brawling outside bahay ng alumni, and then a police car comes and chases Fabio Makisig and arrests Rex Lawin. So I said, I don't know how you guys are gonna pull this off, but this is my imagination at the moment. Just tell me if we can't do it, I'll change it. And so I was in Thailand, and I was so surprised. Like, they sent me the video. They sent me the video, and they were able to do it. It's like the UP police came and arrested Rex Lawin, and it's like, it's perfect. And I said, how did you do that? And apparently, like, sila Tarobal just like binola nila yung police and whatever, like, and the police got interested in whatever, and that was it. That's like, okay, we were able to do it. We just had to thank the UP police sa show. And it was like, those are the things that are like when those are done right,
Yeah.
from your imagination to the paper to the execution, it's just like it hits every perfect spot. And I'll tell you what, a lot of these things I only experienced them in MWF. You
Yeah.
don't get to see that often in what we do in the theater because everyone thinks it's like a highbrow thing, you know. But in wrestling, it's actually encouraged that the crowd reacts as the story unfolds. That's why it felt like, when, like, the origins of Shakespeare, where people could actually heckle the performers and talk back, and that's the kind of energy we get.
Yeah, and I think parang sinet up nyo rin yung audience for that reaction. Kasi nung una, kay Maria, nasa screen siya, tas nilabas yung live. Pero
Yeah,
ito, nasa ring, lumabas ka sa audience, pero lumabas ka pa. I mean, you're playing
yeah, yeah,
spaces. I mean, virtual and
yeah,
the live spaces. Doon ako
yeah,
interesado din, William, kasi hindi mo lang siya nilalaro sa visual, like your, di ba, pag sa wrestling, when you see them na naka-costume, siguro fake yan, pero ang ganda ng costume niya eh.
yeah,
Pero ito, may another layer akong nakikita siguro sa ginagawa ng MWF. Siguro ito yung poetics ninyo is,
yeah,
you're
yeah,
playing with the virtual and the live spaces.
yeah,
And yun yung ginagalawan ng audience. Like, kunwari, di ba, alam mo naman yun sa wrestling ng bata ka, di ba? Yung aagawin yung upuan sa tabi mo, ganyan.
yeah,
Parang feeling mo totoo kasi nga, mas malapit sa yung danger. Pero ngayon, within the UP community pa, tapos may nagsasapakan sa labas.
yeah,
And yun yung, parang kumbaga, di ba, pag kunwari may narinig ka sa kapitbahay, may nagsasapakan sa labas, and you,
yeah.
talagang uzi ka eh, lalabas ka.
Right. Oh, yeah, yeah,
No,
yeah,
kaysa lumayo ka. Dito kasi parang, naku, lumapit sa akin yung wrestlers, nakakatakot. So, parang lalayo ka, pero nararamdaman mo yung danger. Pero eto, nilabas niyo yung danger, mas nilayo nyo. Eto naman yung mga tao, labas tayo. May ganun
yeah.
feeling, yeah.
And we did a lot of this stuff. We were able to play around with the idea of that, like knowing that we had the chance to meld video and live theater in our storytelling. Um, when we had our first show in Bahay ng Alumni, Gus Queens was uh, Lasa, I don't know what they call themselves, Lasalians or whatever. So yeah, so he was from Lasal. So
May shirt pa ba siya? Yan yung may shirt siya, tama?
no, that was a year after. This was the beginning of everything. This is Tarek's idea, and it was just so freaking funny. Um, they we had we had Gus Queens dressed up as the Green Archer. we were doing we were doing our first show in UP, and so we had him. I said, just bash UP, just bash UP, and I don't care what you say, right? If like, let's just offend people. And true enough, what he said was, UP, yung mga taga UP, mataas ang respeto ko sa UP kasi ang mga taga UP, pag gumraduate sila, nagtatrabaho sila para sa mga kumpanyang ang may-ari ay taga Lasal. And things like that. And it was just so freaking awesome. It was just like people are reacting the way you want them to react. And then you have um, the UP student character who was RG. And he came out like, with the maroons, the maroons thing. I told you, Gus Queen's entrance that day, not only was he wearing the Green Archer costume, we had like a marching band to play the Lasal, the Lasal march when he was entering. So it's like the whole thing was like it's so ridiculous. And so Tony Mabesa was in the crowd. So Sir Tony was in the crowd, and was beside him. And after the show, when Gus was making his anti-UP speech, almost was relaying what was happening, and Sir Tony was like, "Oh, kailan siya masasapak? Dapat masapak na siya." Ganyan. It's, it's like it's so you're working everyone. And so what happened then was, the way I wrote it was, so they brawl. Okay, so they were brawling. The brawl was taken outside of the venue. All right. And throughout the show, I had them shoot skits of them brawling in like iconic spots in UP. So, like, after 30 minutes, there's a video showing na nagsusuntukan sila sa Sunken Garden. And then the next time, they were nagsusuntukan sila sa Palma Hall. And then the next time, nagsusuntukan sila sa SC. And it was so effective that we actually ended the show. So the way I structured the show was, the main event happens, people thought the show was over, and just the moment when people were starting to come out, Gus and RG come back in, brawling. And they brawl back to the ring. And so, you could see the audience. They thought it was over. They were moving out of the ring side, and then they see Gus and RG going back, and they're brawling. And I think the finish was, so you remember there was a marching band in there, right? There was a marching band in there. So Gus asked for the marching band, the band leader's baton. Okay? So this is actually Tarek's idea, and it was so effective. So it was like Gus was asking for the baton. So the marching band leader, instead of giving the baton to Gus, he gives it to RG, takes out the jacket, and reveals that he is UP underneath. And then they just play the Diversidad. So that's how the show ended. And you could do a lot of these things because you're allowed to be rowdy, you're allowed to play with people's emotions, and you're allowed to be politically incorrect from time to time in wrestling, as long as it's done right and it's clear that it's a show, and the villains are doing bad things and the good guys are doing okay things, at least then you could do a lot of these things. And we were able to do a lot of that. I remember we also had This was also Gus Queens. And when Veronica Litton came out as a trans woman, we ran this storyline where they were campaigning to be the commissioner of MWF. So it was uh, Gus versus Veronica. So at that time, Veronica just came out as a trans woman, and we were discussing we call this the promo. So we call the non-wrestling yung mga speech as promos because you're trying to promote something, right? You're trying to promote a match or you're trying to promote the next show, so we call them promos. So when we were discussing the promos and Veronica was there, and we were looking for something that would really hit the right notes for this promo to work. It was Veronica that suggested for Gus to attack her gender. And I said, if you're okay with this, then we go with this. And she said, of course I'm okay with this because this is how people are gonna hate Gus. And I called Gus and say, what do you want to say? This is the thing that we want to say. And Gus said, okay, I'm going to say, bakit nila iboboto ang isang taong hindi nila sigurado kung sino siya. Right? And so Gus told Veronica in the ring, parang bakit maniniwala sa mga tao mismong sarili mo hindi ka sigurado kung ano ka. And it was like, people booed, and it was, you get the reaction out of them. So that's one of the things that we were able to I'm not gonna say get away with because it's not a crime, but I think we were able to use these political incorrectness,
or let's just say difficult conversations na hindi
difficult, yeah.
Like, kunwari, di ba dito, parang, ikakat ko yung iba pag may nasabi tayo. Pero,
yeah.
with wrestling, kasi nga, di ba, ang idea natin, like, kunwari, sinabi ng mga magulang natin, tabu yan, kasi violent yan, ganyan. And, doon ka nakakuha ng mas malaking espasyo. Kung violent pala to, dilagay ko lahat ng nakikita kong violence everywhere.
And make it a commentary.
And
that's how I did it.
Para siyang dark comedy ganun ko nakikita. And, napapasok niyo yung politics na mismong si Veronica yung nagsasabi, hindi, gawin natin, sabihin natin to. And gusto kong reaction, yung mga tao, nag-boo.
Yeah.
Got a smart audience.
Yeah. And this is, the thing is that I was working with, I was in the booth and Mark Dalacat and Ayo were there. And I did not tell them what was coming. And when Gus dropped that, I mean, I just felt the anger out of Mark.
Yeah.
Because Mark knew the nature of the show.
Yeah.
And he knows that we allow the performers to improvise. And so for him, he took that as you improv that line and I don't like it. And I was there and I said, don't worry, we made him say that.
Yeah, and after that promo, ano nangyari, William? I mean, syempre parang you got that reaction from the audience. Nasundutan pa ba yun ng mga susunod na conversation such as that?
Well, it set up the whole Gus versus Veronica Shannon storyline. And the reason why I was okay with Gus saying that line is because in the end of this story, it's going to be the Veronica Shannon arc, right? She's going to emerge victorious out of this. I mean, these things, I'm okay with them because I am sure as the writer that I will take care of these things, The danger there is you do a lot of these things and you just keep on repeating that without a payoff. That's the danger of the thing. If you are sure that the payoff is going to be something that would reverse the situation, situation and make the other guy look like really the villain, then by all means do those kinds of storylines. And it set up like a whole year of Veronica versus Gus storyline, and it the if you remember the gender equality, the gender thing we did, it kind of is threaded towards that, because at the end of this storyline, before COVID hit, Rex Lawin turned on Gus Queens to join Veronica Shannon, because Rex Lawin now respects who Veronica is. And because we know, and we write the shows knowing what the endings that the endings, or at least where we want the stories to go, we are able to do these things because we are so sure of ourselves that we are going to have a big payoff out of all this.
That's right. Siguro isisingit ko lang din, William, naalala ko, sino ulit yung character na yung rainbow flag ay pinampunas niya sa sarili niya.
Yeah, that's Rex Lawin.
Tapos,
Rex Lawin did that. Yeah.
kaya gustong gusto ko yung sabi ko sa yung part na, ay, pinag-gender sensitivity workshop siya. And I think yun yung parang nagiging self-reflexive ka rin eh. Teka, saan tayo papunta? Parang kasi kung mag-end lang to na magbo-brawl sila ulit, we're not making that punch, that point. And nung nakita ko bigla na nagsiseminar siya, para akong natatawa, and then you find that satisfaction na yan talaga yung dapat. Sa tunay,
And people sat through
yeah.
people sat through the whole gender sensitivity video live, and they heard every word of it. And this is what's great, uh, because we're working with people from different backgrounds. We were working with Veronica Shannon. Veronica Shannon is her stage name. Her name is Veronica Litton. So with Nika, she's part of the creative team, and we make sure that the perspectives are respected. We make sure that people are well represented and things, and we don't do stuff that would be needlessly tasteless. We could do stuff that are tasteless as long as there's a context behind that. But you have a lot of perspectives within the group.
Ang hirap
um
kasi yung para kayong napaka-ironic nung gusto nyong gawin, William, para you want to offend the audience members, pero at the same time, you're educating them. So parang,
yeah
nandun pa rin yung feeling.
yeah
Kasi sinasabi yung complexities, never kang nasisettle sa isang place. Parang ganun ko naintindihan, siguro yung Manila Wrestling Federation ngayon, na parang hindi ka pwede mag-settle na eto sila, eto yung definition nila. Kaya di ba isa sa mga questions ko dapat sa'yo, parang pin down natin ano yung nuances. Pero parang eto yung nakikita ko na, yun nga, hindi ka pwede mag-settle sa isa. Like how you
yeah
approach the structure, the storyline, using those spaces, hindi siya fixed.
yeah, you have to, uh in more aspects than one. Number one, you write the next show out of the audience's reaction to the current show. um you have to balance that with your original plans of where you want to go, because sometimes you have plans of where you want to go, but then things don't turn out the way people don't react the way you wanted them to react, so you adjust accordingly. And also you have to jump off what the performers themselves are giving you. And so there's a lot of these things. And I think the biggest storyline MWF did, uh, right before we got stopped by COVID-19, was that, you remember the whole of 2019, we had the issue of China trying to get our islands.
Yeah.
And so I talked to the Hong Kong wrestler, Ho Ho Lun. Um, I asked him, is it okay for you to be billed from China, from mainland China? And he said, um, if it's going to be drawing heat. Heat is what we call the reaction towards the bad guy, because again, the jargon is the good guys are called baby faces or faces, and the villains are called the heels. So I told Ho, we want to run a storyline that would touch on the China-Philippine geopolitical thing. And he said, okay, if you want to build me from China, let's do it. I'll run with it. And I said, okay. And we're actually going to give you the championship. So that was the big one. I mean, when we were planning this, I mean, this is that was big, you know. And uh, the way we structured it was like it was a this is a form of long form storytelling. So when we were in UP, so every show starts with the national anthem, right? So we have our flag there. We have it's actually the Dulang UP flag. We get them for the show. So the flag is there. Um, there was one show where we wrote Ho Ho Lun. I told him to call Filipinos monkeys on the mic, and so there was a lot of like, people are gonna hate him, and so we ran this. I'll You know who took the video of this and put it on her blog, on her vlog, and I think she captured it perfectly, like the energy of the crowd. Trixie Daus was in the audience, and she was getting the clips out of this whole segment. And when you watch that video, which she posted, I don't know if it's still up, but I remember feeling the whole energy of the situation, because what we did was I said, okay, Ho, you're going to win, or you're going to lose this match. Okay. So this was still towards the end of 2018. So you're going to lose this match, and you're going to throw a tantrum and just threaten to desecrate the Philippine flag. Yeah, we told him to do that. And uh, I think my direction to Ho Ho was only don't touch it. Do everything to make it appear like you will, but don't. I mean, that's like, don't do it. Don't touch it. Don't. And so that's exactly what he did. He was teasing to touch the Philippine flag, and then he was I think he was demonstrating that he was gonna pee on the flag. And the way I wrote it was, by the time he was gonna do the peeing, the whole roster will come out. The villains, the good guys, everyone comes out to stop him, to chase him out of the building. So that's what happened. Um, but the way I ended that show was, uh, we were able to chase out the villain, the foreigner who wanted to desecrate our flag. But then when the foreigner was away, because he ran out of the building, Ho Ho ran out of the building, and it was so funny. Like, he was improvising everything. Like, he did not run backstage. He ran out of the building, like through the entrance. He was so smart. So everything was like, okay, we were able to drive him out. And then they suddenly realized that they hate each other, and there was a big brawl to end the show, like with everyone. Like, everyone was brawling with everyone. That's how the show ended. And I was talking to one fan after that. One fan really just he came up to me and said, "You know what? I got what you wanted to say." He said, "That's exactly what we are as a nation. Like, things like this we would will irk us, but then at the end of the day, it's gonna be our own selves that are gonna ruin us." And it's like, I said, "Yeah, that's what we wanted to say." And I was really proud of that show. So a year later, 2019, so the West Philippine Sea issue was hotter than ever. Um, I told Tarek, let's bring in two more Hong Kong guys to support Ho Ho. Um, and it's so funny because I shared the flight with one of the wrestlers, and we were talking about what we were gonna do during our flight. And I said, okay, I'm gonna give you a microphone. What do you want to say? Because we really need to build this heat. And he said, I have an idea of what to say, but you have to clear me of saying this. And what he wanted to say was, uh, I grew up in Hong Kong, and I see a lot of you here. I grew up, I was raised by a Filipina domestic helper. Actually, I don't know if she's Indonesian or Filipina because you all look the same anyway. That's what he wanted to say. And he said, it's like, I'm just gonna drill that in, that in my city you are the slaves and we are the masters. I said, okay, just say that. So he said that in a free show in Lucky Chinatown Mall, and everyone was there, and it's like it's perfect, and uh the audience reacted that way. We had that heat. um so the show ended with Ho Ho Lun winning the MWF championship. And so people, the fans actually did not think that we were gonna pull the trigger on that. They think, "Well, why are you gonna um put the put the championship belt on the foreigner?" But then I was sure, like, I'm from Hong Kong, I could carry the belt here, and then nothing's going to happen. And that's what we did. We gave Ho Ho Lun, and the storyline actually got cut from there because we had to stop the show from COVID, but we're gonna pick up from that. And I think we have lots of material going forward when we go back. So right now, Ho Ho Lun is our MWF champion, and the story kind of got cut short from there. He's the champion, and he's from China. He's from, and that's how we are, quote unquote, allowed to touch on these things. And the reason why I love doing those kinds of stories so much is that because this is what art could do. And what perfect way to do these things than wrestling? Because for example, if we get in trouble with the government saying, why are you doing this? Why are you saying that? I would just say it's a silly thing. It's a fucking silly thing where people pretend to hit each other. For real. Why are you taking it so seriously? Right?
Yeah.
Then you're already planting to your audience the ideologies and the messages that you want to come across, and you can't take that away. It's already there. You put it out there and you planted it in their heads, and they're reacting to it. And wrestling fans in the Philippines are smart enough to acknowledge what we are doing. The MWF fans, more specifically, the MWF fans, I think we also trained them to think critically and to look at what we're doing as something beyond people just hitting each other and doing stupid stuff. so they react to it accordingly.
Yeah, and I
Yeah,
think parang 'di ba binigyan mo siya ng rules yung mga wrestlers ninyo, pero at the same time may improvisation. Pero alam din nila,
yeah,
wait lang, alam naming offensive to, papayagan mo bang sabihin ko? Gustong-gusto ko yung
yeah, 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 yeah,
may permission, may agency pa rin lahat ng tao kasi baka may tamaan eh. So parang
yeah,
mindful. I mean, yun yung parang pwede ko siguro
yeah.
napaka-mindful nung actions nung mga
Yeah,
tao.
very mindful. All the decisions are mindful in terms of, like, for example, if we're gonna do something big that is potentially sensitive or offensive to some people, we are going to think 3 steps ahead. You know, we are going to put ourselves in a position where we can say, "Hey, we said this, we did this, but this is what we wanted to lead to."
That's right. Yeah.
And so by doing that every time, I think we gain the trust of our audience not to not to blast us or not to judge us at the moment, because they trust that something's going to happen in reaction to that.
Yeah.
And that's what I think the creative team of MWF, made up of me, Veronica, and Tarek, are just like, we think about these decisions the smartest way we could.
Yeah, and I think ang ganda rin ng approach ninyo, William, kasi tinitingnan niyo yung audience members' reaction na gold mine. Kasi
Yeah.
parang, hindi ko alam wrestling lang yung naiisip ko ngayon. Kasi sa theater, di ba, pag nakakuha ka magandang reaction na ganun, wala ka namang kasunod na play na gagawin.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
TV naman, sa telenovela, like kunwari mataas yung rating nito, naiiba pa naman nila yung ending towards the end of the week. Pero ito kasi mas immediate eh. Yung data ninyo, parang, okay, ito yung naging reaction nila dito, parang tama, o sige, nandun sila sa tama nating timeline, or hindi ito yung expect natin. So, may way kayo, parang sa next show, dito na yung papunta ng ng storyline natin. So, may ganong chance yung wrestling na extended na espasyo na
Yeah.
parang nakinig ka sa audience, so yung meaning making na ginagawa ng audience, ini-incorporate mo to jumpstart your next performance. So kumbaga, hindi lang sila pang ending
It's a
eh.
conversation.
Hindi siya ending lang eh.
It becomes a conversation.
Yeah, conversation siya na two-way na hindi kasi parang 'di ba lagi natin nakikita pag traditional theater or conventional theater, natututo tayo doon sa mga artista. Kaya ang laging tanong 'di ba sa talkback, William, alam mo to.
Yeah.
Ano
Yeah.
pong meaning nung ginawa nung character nyo dito? Na sa atin, hindi anong meaning for you. And wrestling has that access na parang okay, ito yung reaction niya. Sige, papatulan ko. Or, tama, hindi ko nakita yon, sundutan ko
Mm.
sa susunod kasi mas may data ako na ito yung patok sa kanila eh. And we don't have that eh.
Yeah.
Kasi parang hindi ba ito yung sinasabi natin, wala masyadong data sa pag-aaral ng audience members. And I think, isa sa mga pwedeng data ay etong ginagawa nyo sa MWF. Parang how do you
Yeah.
understand the psychology of audience members, how they create meanings, and yun siguro yun eh. Kasi lahat naman ng ginagawa ninyo from story hanggang dulo, kung saan siya isushoot, is anong sasabihin ng audience? Anong reaction nila? Are we getting
Um,
this heat? Di ba? Parang ganun eh. Yeah.
yeah. The heat. Yeah. And I think it goes. This philosophy extends to a lot of aspects in pro wrestling, even the way they put matches together. I mean, the really good wrestlers, the really good performers, can adjust their matches based on how the audience is reacting. Um, the way they structure their matches is that uh, they would just decide on what we call the spots, or like the major parts that they were gonna do within the match itself. And the really good wrestlers can just talk about like 3 of those, and then they're going to improvise the whole thing in between those based on how the audience is reacting. So it's really conversation. This is why you will find interviews with The Rock, with Dwayne Johnson, in which he says like, do you miss the wrestling thing? And he would say he loves being in Hollywood, but he misses the back and forth in a live situation where people can give you the energy and you can give it back. That's exactly what happens in wrestling shows, and that's what we were able to experience for 2 years now in MWF.
Yeah, siguro, William, before we end, ito yung gusto kong tanungin. Kasi parang kapareho sa theater eh. Nung nagka-pandemic, automatic walang live performances. So, para kaming naging theater nomads tayo, di ba? So,
Yeah.
pumunta tayong social media. O sige, try natin dito digital theater, digital performances. Anong future ng wrestling? I mean, for MWF na lang, to make it more specific, sa nangyayaring pandemya ngayon, parang are you planning to transform to digital performances? I don't know.
Uh, the way we were thinking about it is like, my personal stand is that I don't know what Tarek and Veronica think, but my personal stand is that we need some sort of audience right there in the shows. It doesn't matter if it's a full show or if we have to social distance
Yeah.
the audience in the future. We have to put the live shows in and still get that interaction thing going. However, there's an idea that we are floating within the group, wherein we have no choice but to do a soft reboot of everything, because you can't just go back and pretend that nothing happened and just pick up from where you left off. You just have the basics. You have the basics, like storyline wise, our champion is from Hong Kong, and we have like bits and pieces in there, because the wrestlers are not training when things get hopefully better soon. They also have to spend their time, a bit of time, retraining themselves. I mean, we can't just go back and, hey, it's open now, let's do a show next month. We can't do that because we have to train the wrestlers and things like that. But then we have, because these young kids, these wrestlers, they're very social media savvy. They're doing their best for their fans, because they also have individual fans, to connect to their fans through social media. So they reach out, they do the vlogs thing. They one of our wrestlers put out a rap single sa Spotify, which is in character, and we were talking about it, and let's let them do these. And when we come back, the fans know more about what they really are in real life. And we can pick up from that. Meaning, maybe we can go the reality TV direction. That's what I'm thinking of now. You know, the fans, the people already know that Fabio Makisig is not really a tambay in Batasan. In fact, he's an English teacher. Then let the people know things like these, and we can pick up from there. Maybe we can showcase their real sides and make them interesting to promote the shows. So maybe the evolution of MWF would be a more reality-based storytelling. That's how I would like to think of the shows going forward. Okay, what do I know about this person in real life that the fans also know? And then I write the stories out of that and present them in a reality TV format where you meet their families, you meet their friends, whatever, and then just inject kayfabe again
Yeah.
that way.
Yun nga
You
eh,
know?
parang sabi ko nga, yun yung kasunod kong question, William, eh, sa kayfabe ulit. Like, nilalaro niyo ulit yung real tsaka fake. Pero ngayon,
Yeah,
nagdadagdag na kayo nung real situations nila. Yung, so, totoo pa ba yan? Or staged pa ba yan? So, parang,
yeah,
nga eh, parang, yun din yung sabi ko, kasi sabi mo, ibang generation yung kayfabe, tama ba ako? And ngayon, iba rin yung meaning niya, kasi sa social media, we have trolls, hindi natin alam na kung anong fake news, anong totoo, we have
yeah, exactly.
ay lagi. And even yung mga trusted nating mga binabasa, sasabihin nila, naku, fake din yan. So, parang
Yeah,
destroy din ng media natin. So, parang ngayon, nag-i-input ka rin ng totoo. So, hindi mo na alam, ano ba yung totoo? So, may ganun pa rin
yeah, yeah. Then you can go back to where what his its origins are, and then also um, from an athletic standpoint, from the in-ring product standpoint, what we're actually discussing now within MWF. I was talking with Fabio Makisig the other week about this, and Fabio is our head trainer, and he's a legitimate tough guy. He can fight MMA. He's really a martial artist, and knows so much about combat sports. And this was always our conversation when we talk about the in-ring product of MWF. I told him, I'm really open, me personally, I'm really open to changing and moving away from the conventions of Western pro wrestling, because I know that pro wrestling is cultural. When I say cultural, is that the Americans, when you watch American wrestling, they're allowed to look more fake and more softer, so to speak, um, in terms of strikes, in terms of hits, because the American audience allows this and they accept that readily. Whereas when you go to Japan and you watch the Japanese pro wrestling shows, they look more hard hitting, they look more real, because that's what the audience reacts to. So I was talking to Fabio, and I floated this idea of what do the Pinoys react to when it comes to fights. We like Manny Pacquiao, we like hitting, we like strikes. Why don't we incorporate more of that and make it more of like a hybrid MMA with grappling style of wrestling for people who can do that, so that you have another layer of kayfabe. When there are new people coming in, they could say that this looks like a real fight. Is this a real fight? I don't think so, but I'm hooked, because there's this doubt here that maybe it's real after all. And then you can showcase the performance side there. So there's a lot of possibilities, and it's a good thing that we were able to step back and think of these next steps, because I think we're on the same level here with, like, just like any other theater company. As I said, we consider ourselves a theater company. So it's like, how are you gonna deal with the possibility of having audience-less shows or whatever? I mean, if we don't have any choice, we don't have any choice. We have to do it like that. So there are steps that can be done. I think the reality TV show format lends itself to that kind of, shifting realities and blurring the lines between fiction and reality, hence kayfabe. So it lends itself to that. So I think just I think what we're just waiting for is the ability for the wrestlers to train safely again, and we'll give them like a few months to train again.
Yeah, and lahat ng theater company yan din naman yung objective na parang safety muna, paano natin
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
i-approach to. And very interesting concept, William, kung saan nyo gustong dalhin, and sana sana magamit itong case study nito na MWF para makita rin, I mean, kailangan din natin mag-update ng skills natin kung paano yung approach natin sa technology. And I think meron kayong experiences dyan. And
Yeah.
baka yan yung pwede nyong mas share sa mga susunod pa natin. Sana masundan tong conversation na.
Yeah. Because I'm really willing to make this process known to other uh, performance art studies, because I want what we do to become respected. And honestly, I don't think we're there yet because no one knows what it actually is. You know, you ask people on the street, like, what do you think of pro wrestling? They're gonna say, oh, it's like stupid Hulk Hogan, Stone Cold Steve Austin shit. There are a lot of things that are done in wrestling were stupid and are stupid, but it doesn't mean that the art form
It, yeah.
will stop there and it cannot be elevated. And I think we are ambitious and creative enough to think that we are the people who can try elevating it and taking it into a more uh, artistically respected and viewed kind of genre and kind of art form.